Hello, my name is Fiona Burt and I'm a commission interpreter. Today I will be speaking to you about what I suppose could be called extrasensory perception or sixth sense. Ladies and gentlemen, way back in 1975, the Chinese authorities had to evacuate tens of thousands of people from the city of Haicheng. And this evacuation took place just a couple of hours before a massive earthquake virtually destroyed the whole town. Now, this evacuation, which was undertaken by the municipal authorities, wasn't just the result of a happy coincidence or a hunch on their part. Rather, the Chinese seem to have recognized a phenomenon way back then, 25 years ago, that we in the West are only just starting to study now, a quarter of a century further on. Now, this phenomenon to which I am referring is what could be termed the extra sense, which many animals seem to possess. You know, the kind of thing people often say that just before a thunderstorm is due or just before a volcano erupted, their dogs and cats, their horses, the cows in the neighbouring field, even their goldfish, seemed to sense that something was strangely amiss. Their behaviour became bizarre in some way. And this, in fact, is what the Chinese authorities in Haicheng had noticed. Their dogs, cats, horses, fish, what have you, were all acting strangely. And they heeded this deviation from the norm and decided that it would be a prudent measure to evacuate the city. Let's look now in further detail about the research which is starting in the West on just this phenomenon. Now, to date, most research work on animal communication has concentrated on what could be termed the traditional senses, on sight, on hearing, and on smell. But recently, Chicago in the United States was the venue of a major international conference discussing animal communication and animal sensory perception. And the experts attending this conference discussed a paper which suggested that animals may also communicate with each other by other means. One of the means they discussed was using vibrations in the ground. And to illustrate this, I'd like to concentrate on one example which was mentioned in the paper, and that is the elephant. Now, elephants apparently have special cells in their trunks which are particularly sensitive to vibrations. Not only that, but elephants also have special skeletal facilities for detecting even minute vibrations in the ground. If there's a vibration in the ground, these vibrations would travel all the way up the enormous elephant legs to the elephant's middle ear. Now, as you know, an elephant is a pretty large creature with enormous ears. So you can imagine that the bones in the elephant's middle ear, despite being the smallest bones in the elephant skeleton, are still fairly large, at least compared to your middle ears or mine. And the size of these middle ear bones means that the elephants are particularly well equipped to detect with their middle ears even the minutest of vibrations. That's all very well, you may say, but what earthly use is this to your man the elephant? Could I refer you to a scene which you may have witnessed? Have you ever travelled on safari in Africa? I haven't, but I have it on reliable first-hand evidence that this is something which happens quite often in the wild. You may see a whole herd of elephants standing around, stock still, apart from the occasional lifting of a foot. The elephants will occasionally lift one foot or paw, whatever you want to call it, from the ground and then replace it. Some minutes will elapse and then they will do the same thing. No, the elephant doesn't have an itchy foot. It is quite simply because the elephant is using their feet and their skeletal system to detect the minute vibrations which could be caused by a rival stampeding herd many, many miles away. Now, did you know that the sound of a single charging elephant can travel through the ground for as far as 50 kilometers? But were you to rely on your ear alone to detect this sound, you could only hear it with your ear some 25 kilometers away, i.e. half the distance. So obviously, this innate ability which elephants have to detect sound with their feet, or indeed with their trunks, as I mentioned in the introduction to this part, is very useful to them because it warns them of the impeding arrival of a rival herd. Now, elephants aren't alone in having this sense in the animal kingdom. Smaller animals, such as lions, also have what could be termed vibration detectors in their paws. So do scorpions, to go for an even smaller example. And basically, lions and scorpions use these vibration detectors to see where their nearest meal is coming from. If you like, they're their equivalent of the golden arches of McDonald's. Whenever they want to see where the next meal is coming from, they don't scan the horizon to see if they can see a McDonald's. They will put their vibration detectors on the ground, sense the vibration, and scuttle or creep off in that direction to pounce on their equivalent of a Big Mac. Let me get back to the meeting in Chicago before I diverge any further from the subject in hand. The scientists who discussed this paper decided that probably it is precisely this type of vibration detector which enables animals to feel the imminent earthquake, volcanic eruption, or whatever a long time before we do. But what is astonishing about this faculty which animals possess is that it would seem to be even more sensitive than a great deal of the very expensive seismic equipment which is cluttering up the world's earthquake laboratories. Now, of course, more work needs to be done before these laboratories decide to junk all of this very expensive material in favor of bringing in a herd of elephants. But I think that the example which I used at the beginning of my speech of the Chinese authorities' decision to entrust the evacuation of their town to animals rather than to technological equipment shows that perhaps we should place our trust in both the wisdom of the East and the uncanny ability of the animal kingdom before we trust technology. Thank you.